Hey folks, Jonathan here. Little update on the four-wheel drive truck. Haven't touched it since I drove it down the road and figured out that the transmission had some issues, but sort of decided to go in a different direction with this. I know I've already made the rear drive shaft and all that good stuff, but I mean, this is my plan and we'll see how this works out. First of all, if everybody remembers, this thing has got the late model clutch slave cylinder and master cylinder on it, and it's actually made to go on the passenger side, and I left the line long so it can come back off and go to the passenger side. And if everybody remembers right, actually I made that bracket for it. So we've got another plan. I was going to take everybody along this past Sunday. I went and bought a truck, and the plans was to do a video on it and going and picking it up and all that good stuff, but it kind of went bad when the rain started and I had so much going on. We're trying to change the engine in my 2500 Chevrolet. Noah and had James was here helping, and his son James Turner from Rick Hendrick, you know, the buddy of mine that comes to the rat rod builds. And anyway, didn't get to do a video, but I did buy the truck, so I'm going to show you what I've got, what I plan, and what I'm going to try to do here. Okay folks, here is the truck that I went and bought. This is a 91 GMC. I think this is actually the heavy half 2500, even though it's only a 6-lug. It has the 14-bolt corporate rear end, which, you know, is the big rear end. And I bought this truck mainly for the transmission. It's got a 241C transfer case, which is a driver's side drop for the front drive shaft. So that's the issue that I've got to take care of. Now I've got a 208 transfer case out of a mid to late 80s truck that was passenger side drop, and I'm hoping and thinking, and I'm being told that it'll fit on, but it may be a length difference, so I may have to make an adapter plate or do something to change that, to figure that out. But this has got a really good 5-speed in it, and it's kind of a funny deal. I wish I would have taken the camera and videoed this, because this truck, actually, I bought it as a running truck, but with a bad engine, knocking very bad and squealing. And you could tell that it had spun a bearing. And somebody had dropped the bottom radiator hose off and drained the water out. Now, not sure if it's frozen busted or, you know, what the deal was, or if they just done it because they didn't want to put antifreeze in it. But it had no water in it. So I go over to my buddy's house, Kyle Walker, real good friend of mine. Think the world of him, known him for years. And he's actually showed up at a couple of the rat rod builds. But anyway, I go to his house. We walk out back, throw a battery in the truck, start it up. I drive it around to the front behind the rollback. And he said, well, aren't you going to take it down the road? And I said, Kyle, I trust you. I said, you know, there's no reason for me to, you know, worry about what you're telling me, because he knew I was buying it mainly for the transmission. And then he told me, he said, well, I didn't drive it. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I just started it up and drove it around back. He said, I never took it on the road. So, you know, he said, I'd really like for you to drive it and make sure the transmission's good. And so I jumped in it, took off down the road, and probably went, I don't know, a half mile, and making all kinds of noise. Transmission shifted great. We had already put it in 4-low and tried that out, and it seemed like, you know, I'm assuming that the 4-wheel drive worked, which, like I said, I just needed transmission, so it didn't matter. But coming back, I got on it a little harder, went through all 5 of the gears. You know, transmission felt great, no problems, no issues whatsoever. And before I made it back, you know, I was up to speed pretty good, and the engine started quieting down, which really scared me because I knew something was going to happen. And it actually quieted down until it locked up. And when it locked up, I just shoved the clutch in and I just coasted. And I coasted all the way back and then right back up behind the rollback. So even though I bought it as a running, driving truck, I blew it up before I got it loaded. So, which, like I said, didn't matter. I mean, it was knocking and squealing so bad that I really wasn't too worried about it. Now, this is a throttle body truck, but it's a 350. It's 5.7 liters, not the 5, the 5.0. It's not a 305. And a few things about this truck I'll show you that was a good part. But before that, right after I had made the deal for this truck, I had a friend of mine that lives right down the road here, a neighbor, that actually stopped in and needed a rear end for one. And I said, well, I've got one coming. If you can just give me a couple days to get it here. And then right after that, I had a phone call from Bobby that a buddy of his needs a serpentine setup for one of these. He wants the alternator, power steering pump, air conditioning compressor, all the brackets, all that. And I said, well, Bobby, I've got one coming, if you just hold up. So I had already, got pieces that are claimed off this truck, before I even got it here. So that's always a good thing, because, these trucks part really well. But one really good thing about this truck, if you noticed, it's still got the air cleaner tube on it. The wiring has not been chopped on, cut, messed with. When you run along one like that, you can pretty much figure it may be wore out and all that, but it was kept in good shape when it comes to not necessarily maintenance, but when it comes to how it was fixed, when it was fixed. It wasn't chopped up and cut on and stuff like that. It's a pretty straight old truck besides the rust on it. The doors are actually really good and straight. The fenders are good and straight, and somebody I'm sure can use them. Interior is terrible in this truck. Now this has got an MV 3500 4-speed with overdrive, or 5-speed, whatever you want to call it. And like I said, transfer case is not going to work for what I want, but the transmission is going to be a good one to put in there. And like I said, I've already got the slave cylinder set up for this transmission. So if we get the transmission in, that won't be an issue. And then we can figure out our transfer case situation. And then I've got these drive shafts plus the ones in the truck, so we can make another set of drive shafts that will fit it, and it'll be a lot better setup in the end. And now, really, with them big tires, I know it don't need an overdrive, and I'm not necessarily getting it for that fact. I'm getting it for the fact that first gear, second gear, it's all synchronized, easy to drive. And this has got, the stereo hasn't been ripped out or nothing and replaced. It's got the original stereo and the graphic equalizer and the tape deck, and so it's pretty much a straight old original truck. The dash is just like all the others, just shot to pieces there. And it's a pretty plain Jane truck. It didn't have carpet, it had a rubber mat, and I think it's in good shape. It just needs cleaned up. So somebody can use that. It's nice, once your carpet wears out, to be able to replace it with something like that. But as for the seat, shot, dash, windshield's busted. Got a good tilt wheel. It's good and tight. It's no play in it like the GMs get. Just dirty, needs cleaned up. But a really good parts truck. And so that's the plan. Pull the transmission. Probably maybe get Noah to do it this weekend, or actually the fellow that's wanting the rear end, I think he's wanting to work out some trade with labor instead of money, which I have absolutely no problem with. So I might just get him to pull the transmission, transfer case, and all that. At the same time he pulls the rear end out, and go ahead and just let him work it off for trade. And some beating and banging on the bumper and stuff, but good parts truck. So check out this. Yeah, the doors are actually really good on it. The paint's not good, but the doors are. The rockers are rusty and shot. Fenders are good. And I know, later on, not necessarily now, but as people decide to fix these trucks up later on, that's one thing about it I've noticed on the square bodies, that people absolutely prefer the original doors over buying some aftermarket doors, and just because of alignment issues and stuff like that. And so these doors, even if they're not worth much now, give it a few years. I actually had a guy travel all the way from Ohio to buy 2 doors off of a square body from me because they were good and straight and perfect shape. And the price was right on them, so he drove all the way down to get them. So there's people that want the original parts. And the only issue with the door is where somebody had a mirror bolted there and up top. But besides that, it's a good straight solid door. There's no, it's not full of Bondo or anything like that. You can see it must have been silver before, or a different shade of blue or something, and somebody had spray painted or something with that blue. I guess there's some of the original paint. It's almost a silverish blue looking. But come with some extra parts too. Yeah, no good. But anyway, so we'll get started on trying to get that transmission, or this transmission in that truck. I think it'll make it a nicer truck, and we'll go from there. But anyway, there's your update. Appreciate everybody watching, and until next time, bye.